Well, there are two stories from two different persuasions. So let's see what arises for us when they meet. The first story is that old story about the great Hindu Pandit Ram Dass. Now, we know that the basis of the Hindu belief is that all of existence occurs in the great body of Vishnu. And Ram Dass, like his father and his father's father before him, and a long, long line of scholars, he knew the ways of existence. He knew astrology and astronomy and mathematics and physics and the other sciences. And he would teach his many followers that they were unique and vital atoms playing their part in the body of existence. But then one day, a very strange thing happened. Ram Dass felt himself slipping. And before he knew it, he was outside Vishnu's mouth, floating in a vast and seemingly endless void of darkness. He cast around with all his senses, trying to find a speck of light that his mind could take hold of, but there was none to be found. So he desperately had recourse only to those mantras, those affirmations, those teachings that had been there throughout all of the ages. So using this great, great power of his amazing intellect, he was able just to bring back a misty outline of Vishnu's body. And with a supreme effort of his mind, he was able to have Vishnu put out his hand and pop him back in the mouth again. But nothing could be the same again for Ram Dass. He could no longer teach that all there was Vishnu and existence. And then it happened again. But this time, without any warning at all, suddenly he found himself outside Vishnu's mouth, once again, in this vast, dark void. But though he tried and tried with all his might and the efforts of his extraordinary intellect, he was not able to bring back even a faint outline of Vishnu. Now, there's a little segment of the story that's been left out and will be left out again. But the end of the story is that Ram Dass finds himself back inside existence. But he can no longer teach. He has nothing to say. So he builds himself a little hut by a stream and spends his time watching the fishes dance. Of course, there were those who came and things that were said, but they were not teachings in any form. All knowledge had been effaced. And the second story, it's about an old man sitting beside a stream, his feet dangling in the shallow waters at the side of the stream, his fishing rod pointing out to the center, its line dangling down, but without any bait. He wasn't really there to fish at all. He was enjoying the feeling of the squishing mud between his toes, the buzz of the mosquitoes as they flew around his head. This was the great Taoist sage, Master Wei. Now Master Wei had been round to the courts of the world of the day. He would debate with those who shunned the way of the Tao, who wanted to argue with him, the Confucianists and others. He was approached by kings and emperors, and he knew the ways of life very well. He had a number of students now, and he would often say, sitting still and doing nothing, the rains come and the grass grows by itself. And he would ask his students, what does this mean? But he wouldn't teach them. He wouldn't instruct them. The way of the Tao was to experience for themselves. But as Master Wei was sitting by the stream, suddenly he became aware of the crackles of the grass, the leaves behind him, and he knew that there was someone approaching. Sure enough, scrambling down the bank were two men dressed in the fanciest silken garments, emissaries of the local lord. They were lifting up their robes to try to avoid getting them sullied by the mud, by the stream. And Master Wei knew what they were about, and he allowed them to approach. And one of them said to him, with the salutations, would you be the great Master Wei, using an honorific that was common at that day? And Master Wei knew how to play the game. And he said, yes, I am that most unworthy fellow. And so the two emissaries started a dialogue with Master Wei, saying, we've come from Lord so-and-so, and he has invited you to his palace, and he would like to bow before you and have your teachings and your knowledge. He's offered you this and that and the other, and so forth. And Master Wei knew exactly what would happen. He would be there and he would become a slave to those people that the Lord would bring along, seeking clarity and confirmation of their own belief systems, wanting to argue with him just to substantiate their own beliefs. He wasn't about to have a bar of it, but he had to play the game. So the dialogue proceeded, whilst he began to think, now how can he do this graciously so that he doesn't insult the Lord? So he said to the two emissaries, do you still have that great turtle shell on your wall that is used yearly for divination and to see what the future will bring? Oh yes, said the emissaries. That turtle shell has been in our lineage for more than hundreds of years. Now Master Wei knew very well the rituals that went along with this and what happened, because the pundits would look at the lines of the turtle And they would never say anything bad, because the whole purpose of the whole thing was to build up the Lord in whatever way, say how good he was and how prosperous it was going to be and so forth and so on. Master Wei knew about this. But then he said to the emissaries, tell me, if you were that turtle, what would you prefer? Would you prefer to be killed and have your shell hanging up on a wall, revered for hundreds of years and ritualized once a year? Or would you prefer to be alive, swimming around in a stream, waggling your tail in the mud? Well, the emissaries thought to themselves, this fellow is completely mad, completely mad. But, when they arrived, when they saw this bedraggled creature, they had the same thought, how could this be a great sage? But when he gazed at them with his steady, piercing gaze, momentarily they had an insight. And so it was with this. One of the emissaries piped up and said, well, of course, he'd prefer to be alive swimming around in the stream waggling his tail in the mud. Yes, said Master Wei, that is the way with me. And so he got up and turned his back on the two emissaries, waggling his muddy, obscene bottom at them. And so they had to scramble up the banks, trying to avoid getting mud on their silken garments, muttering to themselves, saying, well, he's just completely mad here. We'll just go back and tell the Lord that, he's not a sage at all, he's just an old madman. Where do these two stories meet in us? Where is it that we're placed now? Are we in that place where there's nowhere to go and nothing to be and nothing to do? Are we still scrambling in the void with our mind casting around, trying to find a point of light on which to grab so that the mind can be alive and keep us enslaved? Where do these two stories meet in us? What does sitting still, doing nothing, the rains come and the grass grows by itself mean? Life goes on. We're still doing. What could it mean, sitting still and doing nothing?
And it's no longer at work.
No.
But it looks like you're not doing anything, but the grass is still growing and the rains are still coming.
Yes.
So even though it appears that nothing is happening, everything is still happening
Right on.
within.
Right.
It would seem to me like the mind makes a story of everything.
Yes.
So when you're doing like the I, you're actually doing for the story.
Yes.
Like, your mind has projected already an outcome, and then you make the action to achieve the outcome. And when you're doing without doing, there isn't the story there. So the mind isn't really doing something or trying to create anything. It's just there happens to be something in front of you,
Right.
and there's some sort of force or energy there, which you can't help but interact with life. and that's just then the doing, I guess.
Right.
That just natural
Absolutely.
interaction.
Right.
I just had a really beautiful meditation,
Yes.
and your story was really fitting with the experience I just had.
Uh-huh.
It was like mind is coming and going, no? But I always fight with the mind. Oh, come on, mind again, right?
Yes.
But today, like around like a third round of this coming and going, I thought, okay, somehow I found a place within me which doesn't matter if mind comes and goes. And then all of a sudden my judgment went,
Yes.
and something kind of melted,
Uh-huh.
and very peaceful.
Yes.
And yeah, about this thing about the basement is need to be going also.
Yes.
It's a lot to relate that. And then your story was exactly like my experience. You're supporting my experience.
Yes.
It's interesting that sometimes simple equals stupid in some people's eyes,
Yes. Exactly. Yes. Yes.
but it's not.
It's not at all. Yes. Thank you.